How many opportunities do we walk right past every single day? You could be just one idea or one relationship away from the opportunity of a lifetime. Well, you're about to meet a man whose friendly curiosity led to building a thriving business. Could it happen to you? Stay tuned and find out. Welcome to the Main Street Capitalist Show. I am your host, Russell Gray, here in studio in Scottsdale, Arizona, and you are going to love this show. You know, you hear a lot about the entrepreneur's journey, and it's always an interesting thing to hear about how someone goes from being a kid in high school with ideas and dreams and making the requisite mistakes that a lot of young people make, and then figuring it out and doing something remarkable. Well, the man you're about to meet is a guy that has that story, and you're going to love that story. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Travis Hasse.
Yeah, well, thank you, sir. You know, we got the khaki club.
Yeah, I decided to go with that. You know, it's late February as we're recording here in Arizona.
We color coordinated it.
Yeah.
So
so we know each other because you're a member of Collective Inner Circle Mastermind. You know, for those of you that don't know, Collective Inner Circle Mastermind is a mastermind that I'm a partner in with George Gammon, Ken McElroy, Robert Helms, Jason Hartman. And the five of us get together with all these amazing people. And Travis, you're a guy we inherited, or I inherited. You know, we merged the Real Estate Guys program with Kenny and George and Jason's collective.
Yeah.
And so you've been there. And so over the years, I've gotten a chance to get to know you a little bit. So we're going to talk a little bit about where you came from and how you got to be where you are. But let's just talk a little bit about right now where you are. Who are you? What are you doing? What's your claim to fame?
Yeah.
Why are you qualified to have an opinion?
So currently, business-wise, I've always been fascinated with businesses and teams, right? Just being an athlete from that standpoint, a collegiate linebacker. But currently today, I have an Amazon delivery service partner. So they dub it an Amazon DSP. So what we do is we have a direct contract. We're a vendor to Amazon, and we deliver last mile packages or packages to your home, business, or apartment, right? So there we're based out of Madison, Wisconsin. It's called Perfect Puzzle. And it's actually not for putting packages together in a puzzle piece. We actually came up with the name because we're taking people from all walks of life, from all around the world, and we're just accomplishing the goal. And that goal actually just happens to be delivering packages. We deliver, on average, 12 to 15,000 packages a day. So we operate out of two locations. One's right outside Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then we're in Madison, Wisconsin. So, and, we operate a fleet of, around 130, and we've got about 240 full-time employees. So, which is great. So, I mean, from that standpoint, that's what I'm doing. Like I say, we're a vendor to Amazon. They're a great partner. It's kind of, when you look at entrepreneurism, we have one customer. Is that a good business model or not? I mean, who knows? But time will be told. But, for what we're doing, it's a great partner, and we're definitely solving a problem to them, for them of delivering their package to their customer, right? So we look at all these neighborhoods. We're a part of the neighborhoods. And we're trying to represent the brand of Amazon the best that we can.
So I want to talk a little bit about that, as I mentioned kind of before we hit the record button. And there's a whole bunch of stuff I want to unpack, and I want to hear more about other things you're doing right now before we kind of go back and capture your journey.
Yeah.
But I think when a lot of people look at Amazon, they look at Amazon like as a big corporation. Mm-hmm. And the way I describe a corporation is like a pyramid. It's like this self-contained unit. Everybody's inside it. They're all subordinate to the CEO, and everybody's an employee, paycheck, single point failure.
Yeah.
And Amazon's not constructed that way. You've got all these independent entrepreneurs out there with websites and starting stores and shipping merchandise. They're using it as a distribution center. They're using it for marketing. They use it for publishing. And they've really created a network. And so when people see your trucks with Amazon emblazoned all over them, they may think, oh, you work for Amazon. But you're, just to be clear, you're 100% independent, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that I think if people look at and say, well, we're not creating jobs. We may not be creating jobs, but we are creating a lot of opportunity. And so you've got this opportunity. How did you get into this? How did you even find this? I mean, I'm sure you didn't apply for a job as a delivery guy. How did you even figure out this was a thing you could do?
So in life, I always believe things kind of come full circle, right? And when you kind of have some things in the back of your mind that you know that are going to happen. So my grandfather actually owned a trucking company in Monroe, Wisconsin called RJ Hasse Trucking. And he had 3 semis and he hauled cheese because my hometown, Monroe, Wisconsin, we're all Swiss, right? So all these Swiss creameries, cheesemakers, everything all settled in our area of southern Wisconsin, okay? So there's all these small cheese factories everywhere. Like my high school is literally our mascot, like our name, we were the Monroe Cheesemakers, and our mascot was a mouse. And that's a true story. But
the cheeseheads are Green Bay Packer cheeseheads.
And you see the cheeseheads in Green Bay, et cetera, right? Even my wife, Brittany, her uncle is still a master cheesemaker. And her grandparents are from Switzerland, and he was a master cheesemaker and owned a cheese factory that's right outside Monroe, Wisconsin. And I always kind of laugh about it and call it the Al Bundy Polk High football days, right? Our football program was amazing. Like I lost 1 high school football game my entire career with 3 state championships, and we lost in triple overtime with 3 field goals to go to state. And we had a very good leader. Pat Martin was our coach. He won like 15 Badger conferences in a row. And it just instilled good farm kids, et cetera, just playing good sports. We were ranked nationally my senior year, but we're also ranked number 2 as the worst name in high school football, being the Monroe Cheesemakers. And the number 1 team was 15 minutes from us, and they were the Freeport Pretzels, right? So, because they just made a pretzel factory, right? So, but anyway, it's just like, coming from that standpoint, I always just had that thing with teams, okay? So how I got into Amazon is I used to own a liquor company, and I sold that in 2019. It's something I started from my kitchen table. And I was actually up in Canada fishing with my friend Brad, who's a UPS driver. And Brad was making fun of me, calling me Hollywood. I tell the story all the time. He's like, "What are you going to do now?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm going to come deliver packages with you, Brad. It sounds fun." And he goes, "No kidding. You can actually do that as a seasonal job." So I wasn't doing anything in the off season. And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds cool. Go exercise, deliver some packages. That'll be fun." And so I flew down to Treasure Island, Florida. My wife and I, until Hurricane Helene came by, we had a place in Florida, right? And I flew down literally after fishing with Brad. It was August of 2019. And fresh in my mind of delivery drivers, et cetera, my grandpa trucking company, my father's a diesel mechanic, so I was always around semis and logistics. But I always had an inclination who was ever going to change logistics is where I want my next venture to be. And an Amazon van drives by me. So I walked up to the kid that was delivering, the young man that was driving, and I said, "When did Amazon start delivering packages and are doing their own deliveries?" Because normally it was a postal service, UPS, FedEx, right? And he's like, "Well, we're running a kind of a pilot program, like Tampa Bay is one of the first areas that we're operating in." And he goes, "But I work for somebody else that, works as a vendor to Amazon." So I hunted down that gentleman's number and just was interested in it. Selfishly, I was trying to see if I could do this in Florida because I'm like, hey, they're already in Florida. I have a place in Florida. It's better weather than Wisconsin, right? But Florida was all spoken before. And they said, when we open up Wisconsin, we'll give you a crack at it if you want to become a vendor there. So that time kind of rolls by, right? And that's actually how I got my foot in the door, submitted an application, et cetera. And we were able to, get awarded a contract to start when they first opened up Madison, Wisconsin. We started from day one.
Wow. I didn't know the backstory, so that's really interesting.
And mind you, here's the crazy part is about it. It was smack right when COVID started. Okay. So we were in early 2020 and COVID started. And so here I am. I got to build this team of delivery drivers, and so I'm sitting at the kitchen
and everything's
table.
Being delivered, right? I'm sure the package volume went way up.
We're waiting for our delivery station that Amazon owns, where we deliver out of, where our vans are going to be kept. And so the obstacles really start stacking on top of each other, and everybody's moving to ordering by Amazon. right? So, I mean, everybody's ordering at home. So the volume is just going through the roof. And we're waiting for the city to give the CO, the occupancy for us so we can open. It keeps getting delayed. And then COVID started delaying it. So, yeah, so when we started, it was right in the mix of everything shutting down. So,
It's interesting. I say all the time, and, I get a chance, as you do, to get in around a lot of very successful people. And in fact, I just did a show earlier in studio here, and I said the three characteristics that I see that are in common is people who are successful are humble, they're curious, and for the most part, they're generous. They may not be super generous with their money, although often they are, but they're very generous with their time and their ideas. Mm-hmm. And what I heard you talking about was being curious, really being curious and following that curiosity, and that curiosity led you to an opportunity. And then it's crazy how just putting all the pieces of your puzzle put your life together. Because I have that eclectic background, and I look at what I'm doing today, and I'm like, there's no way I could have followed a course of study or a curriculum to end up here. I'd wander all over a lot of places, and then you put all the pieces together, and it. So let's talk about your lifetime of accumulating these pieces. We've heard some of it, but let's go all the way back to high school. You're this high school athlete. Obviously, you were a great athlete. You were able to move on to much higher levels. And so that's exciting. Even at the high school level, you got the foundation of working as a team and competing at a very high level. So a standard of excellence in a team environment. What a blessing, right? Some kids don't get that, but you had a chance to see real leadership, real teamwork, and real success early. Now you kept playing for a while. I mean, you got pretty far.
Yeah, it's so I went on to college, played college football. So like I said, I lost one high school football game, and then I'm just happened to be surrounded by good team. I followed older gentleman, Brett Harper, up to the same school where I was a linebacker. He was a defensive back. I was like a defensive end, kind of like slash linebacker, right? Where I'd cover fullbacks in the flats or rush the fullback, right? But lo and behold, our freshman year, we win the national championship, right? So now I'm on year 5 and I've lost one game. We went undefeated, right? So now I go into my sophomore year and we lose in the final game to go to the national championship game. So I look at a pretty good run of 6 years losing 2 games, right?
Wow.
And again, that's not being cool or Al Bundy or anything, because I remember Al Bundy was a shoe salesman. He scored 5, it was his claim to fame. He peaked early in life, right? So I always just kind of make fun of it, but reflect into that. But here's the thing that I take from it. I was never the most talented. I'm not the tallest guy. I'm not the fastest guy, etc. But I always enjoyed working hard. And I always enjoyed I enjoyed practice more than the games. I enjoyed the camaraderie of the teammates. Luckily, a lot of those years I was, voted captain, and I was never the star player. I wasn't the quarterback. I wasn't any of that, or just trying to organize workouts, or trying to just kind of do that extra thing. And it was just the people that I hung out with. And I always loved that camaraderie of being part of a team. If I didn't go to play college football, I would have been in the military. I think that some of the things of people that we know together, like, Beyond the Brotherhood with Jimmy May and all those guys, that I don't do it because I want to be that. I just really enjoy what they're about and what they're doing for the country. I think it's cool. It's something bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
But when you go to wrestling, like, you're the only person on the mat, even though it's a team sport. I was a guy who could find ways to slough, and not to say slough in there, but I was always the smallest guy. But, the gentleman right behind me started for the Kansas City Chiefs for 10 years or 8 years, whatever it was. The other guy next to me went to the Baltimore Ravens, as you know this, because your family members obviously making it to the NFL. And I could always be within there because someone was double teaming the guy next to me or worried about the guy behind me. And then I could somewhat look like a superstar every once in a while, but I could just still put myself in a position by working hard to be successful. And I do the same thing with business. I always found a good mentor. Like I said, I followed someone on to college. And when he graduated, even in the liquor industry, I found a good mentor there. Next step in life, developing them, and now I have a great mentor that, led me to meet you, with Kenny McElroy, which is a blessing, right? I'm so grateful for that, where we go on a vacation every year, that him and his wife, and one year we took our in-laws with us, and I just learn and listen and just try to emulate what they're doing and try to pick up those little nuggets. And that's how I think I've been successful to build good teams, to be those golden nuggets that actually takes care of that golden goose to keep the nucleus moving. It's kind of just been my foundation.
I want to talk a little bit about the humility side of things, right? Because when you have that much success, you've had success in athletics, not just individually, but on a team level, then you have success in business. How do you manage the ego? Because,
Right.
I mean, you're in rooms full of guys with big egos. I joke because I'm working on a project right now for Collective Inner Circle. I go, we're not the 3 amigos, we're the 5 big egos.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, all the guys are super cool, right? I wouldn't hang around with guys that are big
100%.
egoed. But
you got to rip on your buddies.
Well, I mean, when
that's
you're
part
around
of it.
people that are just having success at various levels and high levels, there's the culture that we work to have at Collective Inner Circle is we're just dudes. We're just all like, nobody's trying to show anything off. But I know we're going to talk a little bit you got knocked down once, at least once that I know of, and you gave me permission to ask you about it, so I'm going to. But I know that, where I have failed big is where the best lessons were, but usually that was on the backside of my ego getting out of control. Mm-hmm. So you're having all this success in sports and eventually all this success in business. We know that you've got the curiosity component. Talk about the ego component. How do you manage that?
I learn it by watching people. Right? I'll give you an example about you that you don't even know the story. I didn't really know you that well, and it's kind of weird. I went into the restroom and you were just leaving, but you were washing your hands, and you took paper towels out and you wiped down the entire counter because there's water all over it, leaving it better for the next person that's coming to use it, right? And you actually probably cleaned up somebody else's mess, right? That's a leader to me. Right. And that's like somebody to sit and have a conversation with you, like you don't even know that. And I just remember it. So trying to I never really liked the guy that in sports, if I'm going to say guy, I don't mean it from gals, but as a young man, you're growing up. That's, some of the things I like to watch some of these young men do some things, and having that humility, as you call it, I always gravitated to the gentleman that was working hard, that wasn't out. It wanted to be on camera, that wanted to be flashy, et cetera. And even though they're doing great things on the field, if I'm going to go on that portion, right? Or even looking at business, if I look at a mentor on the business side, even though Kenny's out there having fun, I'm not going to do anything if I'm not having fun doing it, right? And that makes it easier. Kenny's very relaxed, but there's a lot of other multifamily people that are wanting to be in the spotlight, get rich doing this, all these different things. I'd rather kind of, walk alongside of the guy who's not trying to be the smartest guy in the room. And, we talk about Collective Inner Circle. I just came from Dr. Nicole's, ultra healthy human clinic. I met her, there, and it's not a pitch to her. She's very humble. I'd rather go to her clinic than to a big clinic. And it's, ironic as I'm leaving and, Josh was with us and my friend Skylar, who's another, Amazon delivery service partner here in Arizona. Us 3 are leaving early in the morning, and another gentleman, Phil, who's in the collective with us, is showing up, and I had no idea that he was even coming. So you look at and how humble he is, but you look at the mannerisms of what they're doing and the simple disciplines as you're moving through, you just really start to emulate that and incorporate it into your daily life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about maybe we're going to talk about how you got into the liquor business, and I don't exactly know what the chronology was. I don't want to hear that, but I know I got a chance in an earlier show to talk a little bit about some of the mistakes I made and how it really led to a transformation that really changed me, put me on mission, decided I didn't want to spend the rest of my life being a selfish person. But talk about maybe some of the things where you've stubbed your toe a little bit, where you've learned some lessons that have helped make you the man you are today.
Yeah. I mean, a big one is, as we were talking earlier, I just kind of joke around that my mother has a free ticket to heaven. You know what I mean? I was the youngest I have an older brother and sister. My mom had my brother when she was a teenager, right? So her life changed fast. She had to grow up quick. She was a 911 dispatcher for 40 years, 1 month. And she worked a swing shift, meaning she worked all 3 shifts, and it wrote my entire life, right? My father was a diesel mechanic, as I mentioned. So I always saw that they had a good work ethic, but I also was on my own a lot. So I was the third last child. All I had to do was be home by dark. That was it. That was the only rule, right? Good things and bad things. So you can learn out there that there's things that you don't want to do. And that's kind of where the mentor thing came from. But still carrying on to college, right? I got into a fight with two of my buddies. One of my friends just got back from his first weekend of the NFL. We grew up next to each other. Good person, right? And good athletic career, et cetera. It's kind of one of those where we were actually going back to his house to party more, whatever it was, coming from the downtown area. We're celebrating him coming back from him playing in the NFL. How cool is that? And there was a group of college kids that walked by, and last person, ended up kicking the front end of the car. So we all got out, of course, you're just dumb, aggressive, meatheads, whatever you want to say, right? And an altercation took place, and I ended up hitting a gentleman, and he ended up going blind in one eye. So your whole life changes. And was it anything that was meant to go out? I mean, just doing dumb things. It's nothing that you ever planned. It'd be like, anything that you got to look at it. So as now, because a lot of times, I'll talk to young men, especially on campus, you're going to be held at a higher standard if you're an athlete, if you like it or not, right? And I say you want that responsibility. Okay, versus just ordering DoorDash and playing video games at home. You got no struggle. I always think that everybody needs some sort of struggles to overcome. Just everything just can't be easy. Everybody talks about.
A caterpillar becomes a butterfly.
Yeah, right. And people will say, "Well, I'm depressed," or "I got this." And don't get me wrong. I know that that stuff exists. I'm not trying to downplay that, but I spend a lot of times archery hunting. I hunt a lot. I'm in the wild a lot. And I always say, if we got stuck in the woods and we had to survive, the number one thing that's going to go away is depression and anxiety, because you're just starting to survive. And that's the struggle, I think, that is out there, trying to accomplish something, trying to build something, trying to be with your teammates, right? So I had an aspect, go through trial, get convicted of a felony at trial. I'm all over the TV all the time. I had to go to jail. I got convicted of aggravated battery, which is a felony. Right. And I'm an avid person with firearms, et cetera, which 15 years later, I was able to get that reduced to a misdemeanor. And one of the great things is so I could obviously enjoy hunting. But that's kind of a cool little story. We can go off on some other time how that happened. But it was part of that struggle of something to overcome. Right. So I could either make one choice. I could either, I went to, all through high school, I landscaped and I built retaining walls and that type of stuff, real physical work. I didn't mind doing the physical work, but I knew that's not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I could always remember working along the Mississippi River, putting riprap along this in the summertime, swapping mosquitoes, figuring out how's this guy afford this house along the Mississippi River. That's beautiful. I'd rather be that guy, right? But the humility there of I could either involve in self-pity. Here's the cards that I'm playing with. And I actually had some good people along the way, even the DA that prosecuted me later on, and even a judge that helped me out. And even if you want to call it a probation officer, they all were pretty Travis, come on, what'd you do? You know what I mean? You're better than this. That's where that whole kind of holding yourself as a higher standard. So I was able to get some pretty good guidance from some people that were older than me. It was we can all make mistakes. But now you keep on doing it. Now it's a you problem, right? Or you can learn of what you're doing and move forward. So here's the cards that you have. You got a 50-50 choice. You can either be the victim, right? Or you can learn from that mistake, always know it's still there, and then make strides to make better changes in your life. And I still make mistakes as I go on. And that's actually became one of my leadership styles of building these teams, and even from college football, from captaining people from high school and college, from captaining people along. I'm okay with people making mistakes, and I still do it today. It's even on, our logistics company, I'm not down and in on the grind every day. And we can talk about real estate later on of why I do some things there too. But I rely on people. Everybody that works with us started as a driver. Even me making mistakes as a college football player and making mistakes as a business owner. I've used that one thing that was the worst thing that happened to me, and I turned it into the best thing that ever happened to me. And I just learned a different philosophy in life, and that's where I just kind of got rid of the victim card, because nobody is going to come save you, as the Navy SEALs always say, right? You're on your own. No one is coming to save you, but you still have a good nucleus or a good team that's around you, but you still have to be responsible for yourself and make it happen.
Let's talk a little bit about your liquor business. So you got your football career, and that's kind of ended. You did some of these gigs, and those probably aren't businesses you build up and sell.
Yeah.
So you just stopped doing that. But now you actually went out and built something that had enough value you were able to sell it. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, they start out, they just want to own a job. They just want to be able to be their own person. They want to make money.
For sure.
But if they're lucky or they're strategic, they wake up one day and they've actually built an asset that they can sell. You did that. Did you set out to do that? Or is it something that you just started doing something you like to do and you woke up one day and you're like, wow, I've got something here that's worth something that someone wants to buy? Talk to us about that process.
Cool. Well, I always wanted to be a coach because that was just the next progression of any athlete. I you know what I mean? Remember like Michael Chandler's a UFC fighter, if you know him. He was a collegiate wrestler. He's a walk-on at Missouri. And his path was, probably to be a coach in college for coaching wrestling, right? But then he's like, I know that I can do this. And then he became the UFC fighter because he put his mind to it, right? That's why I like him. I think it's a pretty cool story, kind of Americana. And I was the same way, right? When it came down to now I can't be a coach. One of the guys who actually got me out of jail on Huber, because I had to go to jail for all this stuff and the humility and walking into jail and seeing your mugshot up on the screen, eating in the lunchroom and just all that stuff was just, it was a wild ride. So there's a gentleman named Jake Brown. He owned a furniture store. And I just knew him from the town that we were in. Super good person. And he said, hey, if you need any help, he goes, come work and deliver furniture with me. And he goes, I'll get you out on Huber and I'll get you a job and I'll help you get back up on your feet. Never, and he's very close to me to today. So that's where
generous comes in.
That's
successful
for sure,
people
right?
Generous.
But also that's where the business bug came from. So internally, I could just watch that and just see how he maneuvered, how he worked with his family, how he worked with the customers. And I knew I was never going to be able to coach with a battery record. So I'm like, okay, what's number two going to be? So I got kicked out of every school in Wisconsin because I got into a fight with another student. So I actually got kicked out of school for my senior year of college. And I'm like, I came this far. I got to try to figure out how to graduate. If I'm going to get a degree, because I can remember Coach Herring would say, how many percentage? It's a higher percentage that college athletes get a degree versus the rest of the school. The rest of the kids on campus will drop out. So I always knew that I had to get my degree, right? So I ended up going to a state school in Minnesota and driving there every day. And that was part of the pro officer let me go to school and let me, obviously work at the furniture store. So they really worked with me, right? Especially to cross state lines while you're in jail. You know what I mean? So it's pretty fun ride when you're actually leaving, shampoo and stuff like that at the school gym. So you can actually shower, so you don't actually have to shower in jail and stuff like that. So you do some pretty wild stuff, right? Wow. So I actually just, looking at those aptitudes and started my own, liquor company where I didn't set out to I want to be a liquor guy, okay? I bought with a friend, Trent, we bought a real estate property at an auction, okay? And he was in the bar operation business. And this place was currently like a little small bar tavern, but it was in the country. So my first real estate play was buying this tavern, and we operated the bar in it. And throughout Wisconsin and out in North Carolina and Tennessee and stuff, people will make, it's called apple pie or homemade, kind of like moonshine, where they would add apple cider, cinnamon, and all this other stuff into it. But nobody ever had bottled it before, right? And I was always like, why doesn't anybody ever bottle this? Because all these hundreds of places made their homemade versions of it. So long story short is I brought the first apple pie production to the alcohol industry, and my ignorance was bliss. I knew nothing about it, right? I knew nothing about distilling permits. And at that time, it was just ahead of the whole craft brewery and craft distilling craze. Because during that time, I believe there were like 87 or 89 distilled spirits permit. It's kind of ironic. It's called a DSP, but it's not delivery service partner, but it's distilled spirits permit. And that's what the federal government can give you a license to manufacture alcohol. And in the state of Wisconsin, the state always lobbied to keep distilleries out because Miller Brewing was there, and they always lobbied to never have distilleries come in because it's a grain state. You need grain for all of it to make beer, to make just, to obviously manufacture still. So I actually first started producing my product at a contractor, a co-packer in Michigan, right? But the brand, as Big Eagle, I always thought Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, Jameson, all that was cool, it was authentic that they had their name on it. So the first brand that I launched was Travis Hasse's Apple Pie, which still exists today, right? Because I actually did sell that in 2019. But my whole thing was, if I could build a brand, as you're talking about to answer your question, because it's an asset, if I can build a brand that can operate without me behind it, I built a brand.
Yeah.
And if it's not out me, they're just pushing it or doing it on a daily. I didn't know why I was doing it, but that was just one of my two goals is that it could sell without me selling it. And if I found one of my liquor signs at a flea market, I knew that I made it, and which I do all the time now. Like if I go to a random flea market in a small place in Wisconsin, you'll see some of our liquor signs someone selling for $50, or something like that. And it's Travis Hasse's Apple Pie tin sign. Like, I laugh at stuff like that. I think it's cool. And that's truly how you knew you built a brand that was an asset that you could actually sell, that had brand equity, as you talk about IP equity.
Yeah, yeah. So I just still want to break down. You said you started it at your kitchen table, so you
Yep.
had this recipe. You had to get permitted. What about scaling? I mean,
For sure.
because you've obviously figured out how to scale in your delivery service business.
Yeah.
But to sell the liquor, was it just the brand and the liquor, or was there a team, a manufacturing process?
Yeah.
Was all that outsourced? How did you get it to where it was turnkey enough that you could actually just turn it over to somebody who would write you a check and it would continue to
Here's
move?
where the team aspect comes from. In the liquor industry, and it's more regulated with liquor than it is beer and wine, just because it's hard alcohol. So the government regulates hard alcohol harder. So you have what's called the 3-tier system, where you have to sell to a wholesaler. If you're the supplier, you have to sell to the wholesaler, and then they turn around and sell to a retail liquor license. And on-premise, which would be a liquor, or like a tavern or a restaurant, and off-premise is going to be a liquor store, right? So ABC Liquor, Woodman's, all these bigger type liquor stores.
So let me just ask you real quick to interrupt.
Yep.
Do they focus their regulation at that wholesale level?
On all three. So myself, I could not own a wholesale license if I had a distilled spirits permit, and I could not own a retail license at the same time.
So what was the separation of, what's that about?
Yeah. So if you own one of the three liquor, so there's a liquor license that have a wholesale liquor license, and then you have a retail liquor license, and then you have a manufacturing liquor license. That's 1, 2, 3 tier system.
Yeah.
And the government put that back in play, like after Prohibition was lifted. And is it to keep the mafia out of, alcohol, or all these people controlling it? But there's a tax play every single level too.
Gotcha.
Right. There's a tax play of.
Well, Henry Ford and their whole thing about,
Yeah.
Rockefeller with their vertical integration,
Yeah.
right? They wanted to control every part of the supply chain, every part of the process.
Yeah. And here
Elon
you
Musk
cannot.
is working to do that.
Yeah.
And so to prevent a monopoly from forming in alcohol, the government forced everybody to stay apart. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was curious about that.
And it's, they're the largest liquor distributor, which is the middle person, is Southern Wines and Spirits, based out of Miami. And Warren Buffett was trying to buy Harvey's company for years. I mean, forever has been trying to buy it. I mean, just because of the franchise laws, right? You have a contract with Travis Hasse to sell his brand. So here's where the team aspect comes into it. So a lot of people looked at it as a disadvantage that they couldn't build their own sales network to go out there and sell it. I looked at it as these are all the people I don't have to hire. I don't have to go out and do all the invoicing and everything and try to collect money from all these XYZ bar and liquor stores. You can imagine the accounting nightmare of that. So I looked at it as an advantage.
Sell the wholesalers and get all the retailers.
Exactly,
Yeah.
100%. So I took the aspect of the team approach, the humility. I'm the guy that didn't walk in, and I just was myself. I didn't like try to create some brand image. You know, I mean, I have a hat. I am who I am, right? And I've always been that way. And I'd walk in with my dog, my Labrador. And it wasn't trying to create this hillbilly thing that everybody tries to create now. I wasn't a liquor salesman coming in from Diageo, a big company, trying to gain some relationship with people and have them peddle mine. I came in and just met the sales reps, and I multiplied myself by thousands of people around the country. And I spent all my time traveling around, visiting everybody, and I'd ride with them in the car with them, and I would help them sell it. I would go out and meet retail license people, but I'd say, you got to call General Beverage or Badger Liquor in Wisconsin to buy my brand.
So they love you because you're helping them, but you're helping yourself.
Yep, and I'm not a corporate guy coming down trying to make numbers and, but we had fun. Organically, it was a blast. Like we would hang out every Tuesday night in a garage, you know what I mean? And like it'd be cold out. I mean, all that type of stuff that you do just relationship wise. And it sounds crazy, but remember, there were 89 DSPs in the country that were doing at that time. Today, there's over 4,000. Right. And that's one of the reasons I sold, is because I could see that it was going to cannibalize, because all the competition in the world, all the more supply was going to come into the market, and you're just going to have more competition. And that's one of the reasons I knew it was time to maximize my asset and move into something else.
Wow. So you basically just had to handle the manufacturing component and scale.
Correct. Which I contracted it out anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
So very lean.
Yeah.
It's just a lot like Amazon, right? Get a lot of other people to do other stuff. Amazon doesn't pay for your trucks. I mean, they pay for the service, but you got to come up with all the capital investment. You have to train all the drivers. You have to manage the hiring and the firing and the risk and all of those things. So Amazon pushes all that on you, but you have a much bigger opportunity then as an entrepreneur than you would if you were just a driver, obviously.
They give you the technology and the systems. And mind you, now you're working with, everybody's trying to build a brand to sell. Now you're working along one of the largest brands in the world. I mean, they're bigger in countries' GDPs, obviously, as we all know this. They're intertwined with everything. And the consumer is conditioned to go to Amazon to buy products. So we can run a good system, right? We can take care of our customer from that standpoint and just do it the way that it should be. And I'm not out selling every day. I'm actually running a system versus out front trying to sell the brand. But I think my most nights in a hotel selling liquor was 280 nights in 1 year. I mean, think about the lifestyle that you're living.
Wow.
It was fun when you were a young guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I was driving around with my Labrador truck, my pickup, and just being who I was. It was a blast. Like I wouldn't change it for the world, right? Now, like, having a great wife and Brittany and, great parents, great in-laws. I like the system that I have now at my stage at 49 years old. And having a great team of, collectively, like with the real estate and everything, over 300 people, mouths that you feed. And, one of the things that it's kind of funny, I'll talk to some people, I don't want that headache of people, right? But I look at, it's like, okay, well, I got to come up with, over $250,000 a week just to make payroll. How do I do that? I don't do it myself by going out, right? I look at the velocity of that money that's actually going to my team, that's going back into Madison and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the velocity of that money overturning. And we're just, I hate to say it, we're putting together a system and we're delivering packages and offering a great service to people to be consumers.
So you had talked about looking at the liquor industry and realizing there was a change happening and it was time to make a move. And you mentioned earlier in the interview that you realize you have a little bit of single point failure. You've got a contract with a customer, huge contract, huge customer, and it's been great, but it is single point failure, critical dependency.
For sure.
What are you doing in your entire portfolio to mitigate the risk, because it's a big risk, right? If something happens to that contract, it's,
Yeah.
now what do I do? And I'm sure you've thought about that. How are you handling hedging, if you will, against the exposure that you have to the one business, which is the main horse in your portfolio of activities?
Well, rewind a little bit. I'm not a reader. I know you're an avid reader, okay? And I love that. But I'm not a good reader. Like, I would rather speak in front of 10,000 people with no notes versus read 2 pages in a book. But I love audiobooks and I love podcasts, okay? So during this, while we're starting this up and during the pandemic and everything, it's like, it's kind of, I'll full circle you. And everybody's going to talk about Robert Kiyosaki, okay? One of my drivers gave me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad because he says you talk like this guy, and I'm like, I've never heard of the book.
That's how we got the book. We had one of our students come up and hand it to us in 2001 or 2002. He goes, "You guys sound just like this guy."
Yeah. And this was 2020, mind you.
Okay.
And I just started a delivery company, so we're in 6th year of our delivery business, right? So, of course, I don't read it, but I download the audiobook and I just start listening to it. And then that took me to listen to other podcasts, Rebel Capitalist, just because they were a guest on Robert's, right? Real estate, the real estate guys. And then it's like, hey, they keep talking about this guy, Kenny McElroy, and all these different, just names just kind of keep popping up. And one of the things that I'm always trying to figure out how I could be a better operator is when I sold my liquor company, I wrote a big check to the government in taxes. But I used to listen to Jim Rohn a lot, and there's a section in his books, if you ever listen, he doesn't really have books, but he's got one of the greatest things there's a series of Jim Rohn where they put all these, Nightingale puts all these different Jim Rohn, it's like hours of Jim Rohn speaking, right? And if you go back in there and listen to it, you can actually, there's a portion that he writes in the memo, with great pride, I write this check. And it's his taxes, right? I did that. And I thought I was cool, but then again, at 2, I'm like, why am I spending this money? So I was always asking, even my accountants and everybody, how do these people not pay taxes? I hear about it all the time. And then randomly, as manifest, some things come along. One of my drivers, David, who's a great kid, driver. He lives in Atlanta now. Good kid. He's, Haitian descent. Now he boxes and everything. Super good kid. But I was always hard on him, and I tell the story all the time. I frustrated him as a young man that worked for me, but I knew he had good talent, and I would push on him, and I would never give him the easy way. On certain guys, I'll pick that. I won't give you an easy way. I'll force you to kind of have a little bit of struggle. And like I said, when you gave me that book, and then I just started kind of doing my research, and George Gammon, I remember I was working out and he says, hey, we got this Rebel Capitalist live show. And it was in 2 days. So I left the gym, went home, told Brittany that, Brittany, my wife. And I'm like, I kind of just want to go check this out. I just feel like I'm doing these things. There's just something else. I think I can learn something. And she's like, cool. Yeah, I've head to Miami. Right. And while I was down there, walking through the lobby, actually we know young Josh that we always talk about. Oh, yeah. Josh is the first person I met out of anybody, the first person I even met at that convention, right? Which led me into the collective. But I was walking through the lobby and there was a guy sitting, and I couldn't have picked him out of a crowd at that time, but someone said, hey, Ken McElroy. And I'm like, oh, that's the guy that they're always talking about. So I went over, and that's the first time that actually I met Kenny. So I never even asked him what to do or whatever. And I just went to dinner with Josh and Christina, who used to run, obviously, the collective, and a guy named Damien. So we were just sitting there at dinner, and I was telling stories about how I became a convicted felon, all this other stuff. So all the stories just kind of come out. And Josh, I think, was 19 at the time, which I didn't know it because I bought him an old fashioned, you know what I mean? And he tricked me into that one, right? But I always kind of laugh at that. But I just kind of started hanging around, and I joined a collective, and I figured it out that if I could use the cash flow from the delivery company, which kicks off great cash flow because there's really no equity of brands that you're going to build there and sell anything.
Right.
Which I sold a brand that I could find a bunch of buyers out. And that's not to say that that company's not worth anything, But
You don't get that big multiple.
yeah, but I always heard the phrases coming out of the reason you own another business is to buy real estate. And that really stuck in my mind, right? So I really just started becoming a student from that standpoint, surrounded and built a good team of accountants and attorneys. And I never ran deals by Kenny or anybody else. There's some other, some people like I would kind of talk to, a little bit, but I just started really, educating myself on those philosophies and building that good team. And that really started moving my handle of reinvesting that money into real estate, and working along other good people where I own my own real estate. And then I have, Danny Breesy and Mike Roeder that of at Granite Towers Equity Group, where I'll bring some capital to our deals and I'll work alongside
So you're
of them.
operating as an independent owner, but also an LP, a limited partner.
And a
other
GP with Danny and
okay.
Danny and Mike. Yeah. So because I know that I got to put capital elsewhere where I'm not going to be fully managing anything, right? But I've never ran a deal by Kenny, which is kind of funny. Everybody thinks that you would run all these deals by him. But I just utilized and looked at the system a different way, all by my driver giving me that book and just kind of being humble and taking a step back versus thinking I'm the business guy. I already sold a company. I already sold a different, restaurant company and, everything of this nature. And it's like, how can I take a step backwards and have a broader view out there of that? I don't know if you call it humility, right? Of like, there's got to be a different way that I'm not seeing something, and that's led into, approaching, by the end of this year, it'll be over 1,000 rental units, which is pretty cool. So
that's great diversification there,
yeah.
At least from the business.
And then that's where you look at, to answer your question about having one customer, but I'm using that cash flow to push other places that's kicking me even more cash flow. And that's obviously as other people
1,000 customers over there.
Yeah, right, for sure. And then you just kind of look at how am I spreading things through. Yeah. And I still own a body shop. I still own other companies. And I still just take the cash flow and I don't change my lifestyle. I mean, I live pretty good as the way it is already. It's like, I don't need more cars. I don't need all this other stuff, and it's just fun. I mean, I'd become a student of it and just grown it from there.
So let's talk a little bit about personal development. You mentioned Jim Rohn. You talk about putting good ideas in your head. I say all the time, and you've heard me speak, ideas become actions, actions become results. It happens in your individual life. It happens in your business. It happens in society.
Yep.
All of those things matter because we live our life often inside of a small ecosystem called our business, our network, and then that operates within a bigger ecosystem called our country, our society.
Yep.
And so I put a lot of my time and effort, into wanting to shape the narrative, get as many great ideas out there to begin to help people understand new ways of thinking to create new opportunities, new perspectives, see things. And then the other part of it is your relationship guy. So you got two things. You got putting great ideas in your head, and then you've got relationships. Mm-hmm. I know some of the things you do because I interact with you. You come to all the Collective Inner Circle masterminds, and you're a great participant. So we really appreciate that. Mm-hmm. I love being around you. I learn when I'm around you. But what else are you doing? How do you keep yourself sharp? How do you keep yourself informed? How do you interpret, or if linebacker, read and react to what's going on, so that you know how to make better business and investment decisions?
I simplify it. Okay, so I'm very fast to cut the boat anchor, is what I say it is. Right? If it's a person or a thought or something, I'm very fast. If it's if I don't like, and I think you've seen me do this before. If I don't like where someone's going or whatever, I cut it and I move on. Right? I don't obsess.
I'm glad you're here. I made the cut.
Right. But not in an egotistical way. Like I told you,
life is short.
I have my buddies that I grew up with, and I have my hunting buddies that I love to death. And we all do different things in the world, right? But there's nothing more than sitting around. And if you saw our text message threads, you would think that we all hate each other. But I love that. But I also love people that are excelling at cool things. And I don't want to be around those people because I want something from them. It's just when I graduated high school, I walked across that threshold and I went to college because I knew there was a whole better world out there than Monroe, Wisconsin. even though there's nothing wrong with Monroe, Wisconsin. I just wanted to go out and see something different. And I think that I've always had that. Or I wanted to, as I say, I always work hard. I always just wanted to try to work hard at something because I love that struggle. I really do love, as I call it, living in the suck. I love that, right? So, and I just think that that makes you a better person. You know what I mean? I'm very diligent in the morning. When I wake up, I'm trying to get you to cold plunge, and you say you don't like the cold. But I've been doing that before it was popular. That was all over social media. Reggie White has been doing it ever since, and I loved Reggie White. Reggie White was my idol as a kid. Came to the Green Bay Packers, and he, good man of faith, good family man. And unfortunately, obviously, he didn't. He passed away right away. And but he would always take ice baths. So I read that in Sports Illustrated, and then I started taking ice baths because Reggie White did it, so I'm going to be cool, right? So I had no idea what I was doing, but I just know physically how I feel better. So it wakes me up in the morning. I don't go through social media in the morning. I don't even check emails in the morning. I go right to the gym. I just have my own time. I get up early in the morning. First thing I do is I do cold plunge. I've been doing it for years. I used to do cold showers just beforehand because it felt like it woke me up. Like I could be there. I could hydrate, I could have my coffee, right? And then when podcasts and just audiobooks came around, I would just spend my own time in my own mind and just developing that. And that's where, Tony Robbins obviously is the first thing where I'm kind of floating around. But then I'm like, well, I always was curious, where'd Tony learn? And then it was Jim Rohn, right? And then it was Earl Schoaf is who Jim Rohn learned from. And I think there's one audio you can listen to Earl Schoaf in New York City talking in a hotel. And I've listened to it multiple times. And all those people invent the wheel, okay? They learned it from somebody. They learned it from mentors, okay? So in using mentors and accelerating yourself with mentors and personal development from that standpoint. And I don't hang on to baggage. And I would say that I think that I see a lot of other people where they never take the step to be an entrepreneur, let's just say, because you have the small business owner where you're paying more tax and you can go to the quadrant and all that other fun stuff. I get all that, right? But the number one thing that I think that people have that fear that they don't just make a step or they actually consume themselves too much in this stuff. They consume themselves too much in personal development, too much like reading and everything else. And at the end of the day, a full 2 years has gone by and they didn't take a step and do anything. Mm-hmm. I'd rather actually have somebody do a little bit of personal development, get that curiosity, and then start making the steps, then start actually making the mistakes, and you start honing your craft as you become older. And you can build things that you're learning from somebody that's out there doing the same thing that you are and making mistakes and learning from that so you don't make it, so you can get to the point where you want to be faster. And obviously personal development is part of that. But I think fear just holds back a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like obviously I have fear, and I have a saying that has some swear words in it that I say to myself, where I won't swear in your show because we're both faith guys, from that standpoint. But I care. But at the end of the day, I really don't give up what anybody thinks of what I'm doing. But if I care, that means I'm out there with my brand image, knowing that I'm putting my best foot forward, but I'm not letting other people hold me back in what I want to do, and surround myself with good people. My wife is great. That's one of the best partners. You and I talk about this all the time, right? And I spend times learning from somebody like you about that, and Kenny, and I can pass that on to the young Joshes of the world. And not that it means anything. At a coffee shop today, right? This was awesome. This is one of the coolest things in the world. 7 a.m. the coffee shop opens. I think it's Black Rock. I think it's what's called here in Scottsdale. There's a young man, Matt. Okay, I got his name afterwards. He walked up and he had a tea, and he's 17 years old. And he goes, I'm sorry that this just doesn't taste right. And he goes, I'm so sorry, but he's trying to be kind, and he doesn't want to put those people down. But he just said, could I get my tea remade, right? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I go, when you get old like me, you'll just drink black coffee. I go, your taste buds are totally going to change. And he kind of laughed, right? And I noticed he walked back over and sat down at his table. The kid pulls open a Bible. right? How many 17-year-olds you see that before they're going to school, that they're just doing their thing? And it's cool to see that. And I walked over to him like, dude, that's so great. Like, you're so kind. You're already becoming a leader of your generation. And I know that that's one of the ethos that you want to pass on. And you can keep passing that personal development on and those same small disciplines. That's what I think is cool. But you still have to take the steps, get out of the comfort zone, because we're all fearful. I'm fearful. If I'm going to jump out of an airplane, it's scary. But I hate to tell you, when you land on the ground, you're like, dude, that's one of the craziest things. If I go backpack hunting in the mountains for elk, like, it's tough. Like, sometimes you're by yourself or you're with a friend, but you're going off. And if you're going to sleep in the mountains for 10 days and you got all these animals around you and everything else from that standpoint, it puts you in that little bit of an uncomfortable zone where that is personal development to me, where it's not a comfort crisis, as Michael Easter says in his book, which is a pretty cool book. I listened to it on an audiobook, but he goes this writer goes hunting with Donnie Vincent, who's a pretty known someone that I follow, but they go into Alaska and they got to make their own food, and he's out there and he's like, you're by yourself, you're within your own thoughts. To me, that's personal development.
There's a lot of things we could cover. We've been at this for a bit. I think I'm going to put a lid on it just because I know I have access to you again, but I really appreciate you doing the show. And the reason is because you don't have anything for sale. You don't have a book or a podcast you're promoting. There's really nothing. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if you're interested in telling people how they could reach you. Sure. I know if they become part of the collective inner circle, they get a chance to spend time with you.
Definitely. One of the easiest ways is just on Instagram. People DM me all the time. It's Travis Hasse, Travis Hasse. Just in the work world too. This, I work alongside Mike Roeder and Danny Breesy's in the collective with us. And I help, obviously bring capital to Granite Towers Equity Group, so if anybody's ever interested in investing, from that standpoint, we can look up Granite Towers Equity Groups or hit me from there, and I can, obviously take care of that. But, not to be a plug there, but that's fun. You know what I mean? Working alongside those guys. I mean, that's kind of, and obviously too, my Amazon company from there. Those are the cool things in life that I like to do.
Yeah. Well, depending on when you're watching this, I know Travis will be at the Rebel Capitalist Live in Orlando in May. I'll be there too. Limitless Expo in
Actually, I won't. That'll be Texas. The first one I miss.
You're not going to be there?
Because I'm going to be bear hunting in Canada.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, then anyway, but if you follow Collective Inner Circle, you follow me, and you show up where I show up. Travis shows up in a lot of places where I show up. Travis, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.
Everybody, we'll see you next time. Thanks.